Yo, 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 welcome to Philosopher's Stoned. I am back again to talk about the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki, some fucking robot voices on YouTube would say it. I'm gonna go over each and every god and deity that I feel like is important to the Anunnaki story. So I covered Marduk last week, and tonight I'm gonna go over my boy Enki, who is a very popular figurehead in the whole Sumerian mythological story. The three major gods that you'll hear about are Anu, Enki, and Enlil. I was going to go ahead and just do an Enki and Enlil episode, but they're too important to not split them apart, because as I go over more epics and more texts and more stories from these times, you'll see the sibling rivalry between them because they are brothers. Enki, Lord of the Earth or Lord of the Abzu. Now, Enki is the Sumerian god of wisdom, fresh water, intelligence, trickery and mischief, crafts, magic, exorcism, healing, creation, virility, fertility, and art. Later on in the Babylonian and Akkadian text, he was referred to as Ea. That's E-A, just the letters E and A. He is the patron god to the city of Eridu. Enki is the son of Anu, like I said before. He is the sky god who was one of the firstborn Anunnaki from Abzu and Tiamat. That's who Anu is. He's one of the primordial beings of the Anunnaki. And Abzu seems more like this giant cosmic primordial ocean, but also being some physical being in some different myths and stories. It's also possible that Enki had a twin brother named Ishkur or Hadad. Hadad in the Babylonian, Ishkur in Sumerian. He was the god of weather and storms. The reason I say possibly his twin brother, because in some texts, to be honest, I can't find what specific story says this, and usually I can find the tale or the epic or whatever story it is where it's straight up saying he's the fact at hand that he's a twin brother. But Wikipedia says it says in one litany that it's proclaimed repeatedly to referring Ishkur as Great Radiant Bull, your name is heaven, and also called Son of Anu, Lord of Karkara, twin brother of Enki, and Lord of Abundance, Lord who rides the storm, Lion of Heaven. All pretty cool fucking names there. So I might do an episode on Hadad. I probably will. Or Ishkur, whichever one you want to call him. I like Ishkur. Enlil and Enki are kind of the metaphorical polarization of good and evil siblings that we hear in the same plot as so many other mythological tales and stories. Real Game of Thrones shit. Jesus and Satan, if you will. So yeah, Enki is technically the half-brother of Enlil because Anu had some type of affair at some point. I'll cover that probably in an episode just about Anu. Anyway, Enki's wife was Ninhursag, and her sons were Asharluhai, god of magical knowledge, Enbilulu, god of canals, Adapa, who's described as a human sage, and my favorite player, Marduk, which I already covered in a previous episode. It's also said that Enki was the father to the all-powerful Inanna, aka Ishtar, who was born from an unknown mother. She's a very important figure in the Anunnaki story. She shows up in so many epics and so many stories. Enki and his wife bore 8 more children in the story of Enki and Ninhursag to heal Enki. These 8 children were as follows: Abu, god of plants and growth; Nintula, lord of Dilmun and precious metal; Ninsitu, goddess of healing; Ninkasi, goddess of beer; Nanshi, goddess of social justice, fertility, divination, and the interpretation of dreams. Azumua, another goddess of healing. So there were several goddesses of healing, I guess. A lot of people needed to be healed at this time. Mshog, another god of fertility. Ninti, goddess of the rib, giver of life. These names are fucking cool and hard to say, kind of. They're not actually. I thought I was gonna have a lot harder time saying those names, but I didn't. It's funny that some of these gods are like responsible for so many things. Like all the things Enki's responsible for. And then these other gods and goddesses I've described, they have like 3 things they're in charge of, which is kind of bullshit because some of them just have one thing. Ninkasi is just the goddess of beer. That's the only thing she has to fucking worry about. Ninkasi sounds like a fucking loser. I'm just kidding, Ninkasi. Don't fucking come visit me in my dreams and bust a beer bottle on my fucking head. Enki shows up in a majority of the cuneiform texts, including the Enuma Elish, which is the Babylonian creation myth. The Epic of Gilgamesh, which I've gone all over already. Backtrack and watch that one if you want to. You really should. To understand all of this, that's a really big part of it. Another big story he's involved with is the Atrahasis, which I'm definitely going to cover because I've read that one a few times. It's fucking great. So Enki, Enlil, and Anu, they are the triad of Mesopotamian gods who rule the earth, the high heavens, and the atmosphere. So they're kind of like, I guess you'd say the most important if you really want to look at it that way. Enki is also coined as the trickster god, but that sounds like he's some type of bad guy who's trying to like fuck everybody over. But in my opinion, he's on our side over the gods. In the Atrahasis, he saves one good human man to win over Enlil's decision to wipe out humanity, and does just that. So humanity was granted a second chance. So the reason we're here is because Enki got Enlil to give us a second chance. So it seems to me like Enlil is more of a darker, more nefarious figure in all of this. Because that pisses me off because Enlil is sometimes portrayed as the better brother, but Enki is honestly the one that he's the Anunnaki deity that rides for humankind the most. In other stories, he uses his wisdom to override the barbaric decisions and correct the mistakes of his not as bright siblings and other gods who are trying to take out humanity and start over. So he's the Lord of the Abzu. Now the Abzu is like this cosmic ocean located underneath the earth. This is where Enki resides. The city of Babylon is said to be built on top of the Abzu. That's kind of confusing. I don't really know how to explain that. The whole subterranean cosmic ocean thing is honestly a whole episode in itself because there's so much about it that I can talk about. And all the differences in Babylonian, Sumerian, and Akkadian. It all has the Abzu is different in all of them. Now we'll talk about Enki being the patron deity of Eridu. So Enki, also the god of wisdom, was worshipped heavily in the city of Eridu, which is thought to be the first city of the gods. Later it was known as the city of the first kings. Eridu would remain an important religious center for thousands of years. Now, Mr. Enki, what do you look like? Enki is portrayed physically as a bearded man dressed in long Sumerian robes and a horned cap. Fish scales run down his arms, or possibly just full-on fish arms. Like fish, like a fucking bass for a left arm and a carp for a right arm. I'm not real sure. It's also a possibility that being the Lord associated with water, one arm is the stream of the Euphrates River and the other is the Tigris River. And the Euphrates River and the Tigris, that's the Mesopotamia is in between that. So Enki's symbols were a goat and a fish, which later became one like a goatfish, and that created the Capricorn symbol for the whole zodiac sign thing. And I'm a Capricorn, you know what I'm saying? So thank you, Enki. I love goats and I love fish. In Sumerian astronomy, he was represented by the planet Mercury. In the Sumerian epic Enmerkar and the Lord of Arata, an incantation is pronounced with a mythical introduction, pretty much blaming that Enki is the reason there was so many languages on Earth. I'll recite this one part from the epic, just to give you a little more context. Once upon a time, there was no snake, there was no scorpion, there was no hyena, there was no lion, there was no wild dog, no wolf, there was no fear, no terror, man had no rival. The whole universe, the people in unison, the Enlil in one tongue spoke. Then Enki, the Lord of Abundance, whose commands are trustworthy, the Lord of Wisdom, who understands the land, the leader of the gods, endowed with wisdom, the Lord of Eridu, changed the speech in their mouths, brought contention to it, into the speech of man until then had been won. So there it is again, trying to make Enki out to be this bad dude, and Enlil this Superman nice guy, which I don't fucking buy for a second. I could just be being an asshole to Enlil. He could just be the business partner of the Anunnaki, and he's like, we gotta get these humans to resource the gold. And Enki's like, hey man, why don't you let everybody chill for a little bit? Let them drink their beer or whatever and smoke their Sumerian weed. Who knows what they were doing, you know? Who knows? I wasn't there, but I wish I was. I can't lie, I wish I was. And that story that I just recited, it reminds me of the Tower of Babel myth that I'm definitely trying to cover soon. There's just a lot to it, a lot of different biblical views when it comes to the Tower of Babel. If you're not familiar, God saw this giant tower being constructed by his stupid humans, and he got jealous because the tower would be built so tall it reached the heavens. Well, God came down and put some kind of curse or disease of communication and spread the humans across the earth, creating the first initial language barrier of all time. I don't really know, so that's like a discussion that's a whole nother episode of the Tower of Babel, because that shit is really interesting. That maybe that story that I recited from that epic could be where they got the idea to say God came down and spread everybody out with different languages so no one knew how to communicate. So that is that. It's I kind of did the quick biography on our boy Enki. I've seen researchers say that he's Satan and has a lot to do with the snake or the serpent, the cult of the serpent king or whatever. I'm gonna go over that because this is just part one. Enki is such a deep topic that I'm gonna go through all the other theories that I've found. I need to read the Lost Book of Enki by Zecharia Sitchin, which is supposedly giving us a lot more Enki information, which is what I want and need. But like I said before, I think Enki's one of the good Anunnaki gods that looks out for humanity, because in all these texts and epics, Enki has always put the importance of restoring and maintaining humanity over pleasing his fellow deities and gods. He definitely rides for humans. He will tell the other Anunnaki or the other gods, fuck you. These are my humans. I'm gonna trick you, and you're not gonna know it until it's too late that we still got humans after you put our people through a flood. I'm going to keep knocking these Anunnaki episodes out because I love doing them. I have such a good time. I know I say that all the fucking time. I wish I was Anunnaki. You know how there's a lot of people, they want to talk to aliens and shit. I mean, I want to talk to aliens and shit too. But I'd really like it if there was a knock at my window in the middle of the night and it was like Marduk and Enki, and they were like, yo, come on, dog, come out with us for the night. I'd be like, I gotta go. I gotta roll with my boys. So that's that. I hope you enjoyed it. This is Philosopher's Stone. I am Neon Mitch, your presenter of the Anunnaki story and other tales and mysteries and other bullshit that might not be true, like the Lyrians or the Arcturians. Go check out those episodes. I'm finna get back into the alien species shit too. So yeah. Hopefully I'll have some guests on pretty soon because this lockdown is driving everyone crazy again. Even though there's a lot of conspiracy theorists hate right now, I think some people are opening up and wanting to talk more about the fringy topics. So that's what I'm here for. I appreciate y'all watching. Have a good motherfucking night and a better morning.